Hi, everyone. Hello. Welcome to VCTV, which is the Venture Capital TV from La Token. I welcome all the speakers, audience of VCTV who have been with us for a long time, for like last 9 months. I've been very committed to watching VCTV. I have to really thanks for your time, thanks for your presence, because VCTV has been VCTV because of the speakers, the founders, and our audience. So VCTV is the venture capital TV for the new speakers who may not know who we are. We were born this year. VCTV was born like this year in February 2020. Because of COVID-19 pandemic, we are unable to meet each other in person. We're not able to travel the world and meet other people and make deals like we always do. So since then, we have been growing. Since then, our community has grown fivefold. That includes investors and founders and our audience. So every day we host VCTV in Asia. I host it out of Singapore, and my colleague Terence hosts it out of Singapore as well in different times. Because of growing demand, we have split into two shows in a day. Myself, Sonny Mohanty. I'm the regional director. I'm based here in Singapore, and I host this Monday to Friday. Today, we're going to discuss about, in very specifically about agriculture and farming and the investments around it. So I have Gary Fowler from GSD Ventures, who has been a very regular speaker. He's from Florida. He always dials in on time. He's a committed speaker of VCTV. I welcome back Gary Fowler. Hi, Gary. Welcome to VCTV.
Hi, how are you, Sonny? Normally I'm in Silicon Valley, so I just got I at the beginning of the pandemic. Actually, in the beginning, I started this with VCTV. I was on the original shows with Kyle in March and April timeframe. So right in the beginning, we were there. But it's great to be here. Normally, I'm in Silicon Valley, as I said, and I'm in Florida at this point. Soon to go back out to California again. But I'm a serial entrepreneur, an investor. I've done 16 companies. We've had two unicorns. I love artificial intelligence. I love quantum computing. I just published an article yesterday on blockchain and quantum computing. So I believe, as you said, this is a digitally transformed world. The opportunities are really democratized if you take advantage of them. And at the same time, no matter where I am, if I'm in Jakarta or Lagos or Moscow, having the ability to use this virtual world to be able to raise money for your company, to be able to get visibility for your company, and to be able to connect with like-minded folks is just great. So it's great to be here and look forward to today's show. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary, and welcome back. Next, we have a new speaker who just joined us for the very first time. She is an entrepreneur and founder as well, out of India. Hi, Maitali. Welcome to
Hi,
VCTV. How are you today?
I'm good. Thanks, Sunny. Thanks for having me on the show.
Okay. Well, can you help introduce yourself to our audience and Gary and other speakers?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really exciting to be on the show, and it was great to hear Gary's introduction. So, like Sunny said a little bit, so I am a founder. I am based out of Mumbai in India. I run my own agricultural technology company called Avana. So we actually work with Indian farmers to create affordable water conservation for them so that we can help them move out of poverty and hunger. Because one of our very basic like values and hypotheses for our business model is that if farmers are given access to affordable and consistent supplies of water that can help them farm all year round and which can help them get a very constant and steady source of income. So I started the company 4.5 years ago, and so far we've worked with 11,000 farmers across India, and we've seen that within a year of using our flagship product, which is a comprehensive water conservation system, their income rises by 98.7%. So it almost doubles. So it's been a very exciting journey for us, kind of to be able to interact with a rural audience quite so directly. And also to be bringing this product really into a lot of parts of the country. So we're spread across 6 states in India now of the 28. And we're excited to see where this can go, right? In how many more areas across India and the world. And I think I'm freezing a little bit. That's what I see on the chat. So I'm just going to try and reconnect to a different network. So if you can just give me
Sure,
a second.
sure. Thank you, Maithili, for that introduction. While Maithili is reconnecting back, Gary, let's talk about agriculture. Obviously, we don't have arena to talk about regenerative farming, but let's hear from you about agriculture and farming. And where's the future? Because of COVID-19 pandemic, we hear that a lot of investments are getting into agri-tech businesses, into different models emerging because of the pandemic into sustainable farming. So what are your thoughts about it?
Well, I mean, so where we are today, I mean, look at where we are today. The population of the planet has quadrupled in the last 100 years to around 7.9 billion. We've got less land. We've got less potable water. And at the same time, we've got a growing population. And, Sonny, I'm just a country boy, but I said many times, it's like, you don't have enough of something, you need to use what you have more efficiently. It's back to basics. So, and the challenges out there, it's very interesting for me. I had Samir Sharma, the general manager of Intel, on my show a couple of weeks ago, and we had some interesting conversations. Think about, soil, think about water, think about sensors to be able to measure all kinds of things out in the field so we can really understand what's happening and make some predictions. So what's happening today is there's incredible innovations. One of the companies that we're talking to right now is doing self-driving tractors. Now people say, well, geez, that, what's the big deal with that? But it's a huge deal for efficiencies of the system. So now they're using it in a massive scale, working for some of the largest tractor manufacturers in the world on huge plots of land to be able to send a tractor out to be able to get that job done without ever having a human on top of that tractor. Literally, they're purely self-driving, and their business is exploding. And the pandemic has opened up a whole lot of different questions for us. One is the supply chain, the agricultural supply chain. How do we get the right product to the right place at the right time? We didn't have a window in it. Everything from chickens, right? Not having enough poultry because there was COVID in a plant, pork. So, we're back to the basics. Some of the things that happened could have been easily taken care of. And I'm encouraged by some of the technology. In fact, I don't know if we talked about it, but MIT just announced that they have a COVID detection that goes on your iPhone that's 98.5% accurate in terms of diagnosing COVID just by your cough, because they used like 200,000 COVID patients as a training set. So there's technologies that one is prevent, right? Prevent those individuals coming into a plant that would have a fever. So using FLIR and Hikvision thermal detection cameras tied into a security system, so you could have an encrypted message come out and say, you might want to check this out. This person, it looks like they have a fever, check it out. So one is prevention, and we didn't have that before. Right. The other thing is insight, as I've said, on some supply chain panels, that we have a challenge because we don't have insight into the supply chain, right? We don't have the kind of insights that we need. And, if it's not toilet paper, it was chicken, right? There wasn't enough chicken. You would go into the store. I don't know what it was in Singapore, but here it was. I'd never seen anything like it. I went in for chicken. There's no chicken. It's like, I'm looking for chicken. I can't find chicken, and then it's lamb chops and chicken. And it's, so we had and it goes back to, we need to use the technologies that we have more effectively. And then the other part of it is, in terms of this whole lean movement, how do we go down through and make sure we used to have national stockpiles, right, of food. So if we got into these kind of jams, there were stockpiles, but we haven't had them at the same level because we've had this whole idea of a whole lean supply chain. So we have to revisit that. Unfortunately, Sonny, what happens is we forget very quickly. And we go back to our old habits, like happened after 1918, the same thing. So what we have to do is we have to look at that this is this pandemic, SARS 2019 COVID is not the worst thing it could have happened by far, not even close. And there are other kind of catastrophes that could happen in the same way. And and they've happened in the past, right? They've
Mm.
cataclysmic events have happened in the past, and we need to understand that we need to be prepared, a bit more prepared and a bit more stockpile. But again, we forget very, very quickly. The best thing that can happen is this digital transformation has now shown us that we still can live, right? The difference between now and 1918 during the Spanish flu is we've gone through this digital transformation. So if a farmer wants to talk to some type of a regional agricultural officer, they can do it on Zoom today. They can share ideas. They can use sensors in their soil and send them out to a research facility to figure out what's wrong, and course correct. I mean, literally, imagine a possibility that you course correct, and as soon as it's picked up that soil's bad, out in your barn, there's mixtures taking place where they're actually creating new fertilizer ratios to go out on the field that quickly. And it takes one step out of it. Or it goes to the agricultural depot, the feed supply store that's got that equipment, loads it up and schedules it to be sent out to your place in the exact quantity, because you've got sensors based on 5G out in the field all over, all time in real time, sending information out. It's too wet, it's too cold, it's too this. Imagine an orange grove that if the temperature goes down, it's instantly monitored and addressed, instead of waiting and going out with the human intervention. So this new dawn, this new age with data and artificial intelligence is upon us. Agriculture, as our planet the population keeps expanding, we're going to have to be way more efficient than we are today. And as global warming takes place, right?
Yeah.
Look at what's happening with global warming for agriculture. Russia, I mean, this is happening right today, right? And in our lifetime, you're going to see the shifts take place, but Russia's going to become a breadbasket of the world, and so's Canada. It's going to go from northern United States up through Canada, those places, because it's going to be too hot in other places. And the shift's already happened. The amount of water that we have on the planet is actually, the levels have gone down and the quality of it has gone down. So it's a great opportunity for technology, a great opportunity for the purification systems, to deal with, geodiasis. And, I put it in, I had a house that I had on an agricultural field that had been a cow pasture, and the water was not good. So I actually had to put a water purification system in. I would never have known if I wasn't going to sell the house and tested it. I would never have known it was bad. Never. Because you don't test all the time, real time. But imagine having sensors out in the farmer's field on the water supply to test to make sure that it's the right kind of water for the cow, right? All the time. So it's an exciting time.
Yeah. Good to know about Russia. I mean, Russia is huge.
It's 10 times. I've flown it. I've gone from Kaliningrad to Vladivostok personally. I've gone on the plane from Moscow to Vladivostok, and that it's 10 and a half hour flight.
Yeah, I can imagine. It covers from, like in Asia, it touches Japan, and other side, it covers many other countries. Sorry, Finland, yeah, and Europe and many other countries as well. It's huge.
Yeah.
Obviously, they have
China, you got this, Vladivostok is on the Sea of Japan, North Korea, it's out in a totally different environment. But I mean, the world temperatures are going up. I mean, it's not like a myth, like Trump says or said, but it's a reality. It's going up, and we need to deal with it effectively.
Absolutely. Thank you, Gary, for that. Matli, I just wanted to ask you, so when it comes to farming and agriculture in India, it's a lot of challenges. I mean, you as an entrepreneur, a young entrepreneur, you realize there are a lot of challenges in doing farming in India for the farmers as well. So how did you manage? Like, why would you think that you're going to start something in this space in agriculture and farming, because we would like to encourage more entrepreneurs and founders to be in this space. And what made you to be in that space, and what kind of impact do you bring to the society by empowering the farmers? Because the farmers in US and the farmers in India are different, if you see the way they are. So just take us through a journey if you could. And yeah, I'm going to have more questions for you later.
Yeah, sure. So I think that absolutely that farming in India is very different from farming in the US. I think it's different a lot because of the demographic of people that do it, both in terms of literacy, in terms of the technologies that they're exposed to, also in terms of the socioeconomic level. But also, when you look at farming as a business or an occupation, and you look at land size as kind of one of the biggest resources that controls how and what you can farm and the economics of it, you'll realize that farming in India is also very different because the land sizes and the land parcels that a single farmer owns are much, much smaller than the United States or other developed countries. Sorry. So that really creates a distinction between farmers in India versus farmers outside. For example, some of the technologies that I guess Gary also spoke about, with sensors, or using artificial intelligence. There's a lot of larger companies like Microsoft and Mahindra, which is a big company in India, who've tried to bring those kinds of technologies to Indian farmers. And the reason that they have not worked in India is because a lot of the times the ROI that you get with a certain technology on a larger parcel of land is not the same when you have, let's say, a half an acre or an acre. Whereas in the US, your land parcels are much bigger. So if you have a large fixed cost, it's much easier to divide that when your output is so much larger with a large piece of land. So I think in terms of designing technologies for Indian farmers, that's a very unique challenge, that you're designing for like a much smaller acreage than you would be in other parts of the world. And I think another thing which is very unique in designing for Indian farmers is also the fact that they're not always very economically strong, and so they can't really invest in technologies or in services that won't yield returns within 12 to 15 months. So if you're looking at a capex which will maybe yield in 4 to 5 years, then that's not something that an Indian farmer will be able to invest in, or rather an average Indian farmer. Of course, there's really rich like landlords, of course, but I'm just talking about the average farmer. So I think these are two pretty big distinctions. And I think going back to what you said about there being a lot of challenges, I think of course, but I think there's two things that make the sector very interesting for business. I think the first is that there are a lot of challenges, because wherever there are a lot of challenges, there are a lot of business opportunities. And especially because there are these challenges which are very simple, it's almost confusing as to why there aren't more entrepreneurs in the space, because it feels like a lot of simple solutions can really be and I think he mentioned this as well, where he said you're almost going back to the basics because you're trying to conserve what little you have. So I think that's very true, and so it almost seems like we need people to do things simply and to do things easily and affordably, and that can create a very large kind of opportunity. I also think that one thing that should encourage people to be in this space in India is the fact that 70% of India relies on agriculture directly or indirectly for employment and their economy. And so because of that, the market size is huge. So if you're only targeting urban India for a certain product, that you're not targeting about 70% of the country. Which I think when you think about it, like, of course, in terms of buying power, urban India is a much larger buying power. But if you think of the market surely in terms of the number of people and in terms of the volume of the business that can be generated, I think rural India provides a very, very large business opportunity.
Right. And so how do you help and empower these farmers yourself? Because obviously, as you said, there are a lot of challenges. Farmers are not economical savvy. They don't have big tickets to spend and invest like the West or other developed countries. So as a startup, where do you come into the play?
Right. So what we work on is making water conservation very, very affordable for the farmers. And we work on doing that by using an asset-based model instead of a deficit-based model. So what an asset-based model looks at is looking at what farmers have and really helping them capitalize on that. And when we did a lot of our initial research, we realized that farmers, even though their land parcels were small, they were still not able to farm on their entire land parcel, or not able to farm on their entire land parcel for 3 cropping seasons, which is the total cropping seasons you can take in a year in India. They were not able to farm for all 3 cropping seasons because they didn't have enough water, or they didn't have a consistent supply of water. They couldn't plan, right? Like if you don't have a source, you don't know if you'll get it in the next season. So you're not able to buy your inputs on time. And really, the entire supply chain is kind of like disrupted in that sense. So we thought that being able to give them a comprehensive and an affordable water conservation tool would help them really, plan through this. And that's exactly what we designed. And we realized that if we looked in terms of what they did have that extra little bit of land, which they weren't able to utilize anyway. So what we do, our company does something super simple, and I think that's really, the simplicity is where it's all at. So I think that we dig like a large pit in the ground, and we line it with a recyclable polymer lining, which prevents percolation of water. And so farmers are able to harvest extra rainwater, canal water, or river surpluses from like bodies close by. And in India, typically in the last decade or so, we've had a lot of very heavy downpours, but rain hasn't been spread out over a season. So if you're
Right.
not saving the water, you're not conserving it when it's falling, you're not really able, to use it throughout the season, or even like throughout the year is a stretch, but you're not even able to use it throughout the season. So that's what we do. We conserve this water, and then we also work with farmers in terms of providing advisory on how to create these water bodies. We work with them on advisory in terms of what kinds of crop to take. So we really do the comprehensive of, like how much, how should you save water, where should you save it, and then what should you do with this saved water to really increase your income, whether that's through, better agriculture and smarter agriculture, or whether that's through other occupations like fisheries.
Okay, got it. For India, I think water is the major challenge for farmers besides other factors like investments and funding. So Gary, I mean, obviously Gary, GSD Ventures is global, but from an agriculture farming perspective, what do you see different in the US as compared to a developing
I
country?
mean, we're global, Sonny. So we're looking at this from all over the world. It's not
Right.
just. I mean, we're in Russia, we're in Indonesia, Dubai, India. I mean, so we look at it global. But so what we look at is, I mean, this is really agriculture 4.0. I mean, and it's concerning because if you look at it, based on the current growth, by 2050, we're going to need to produce about 70% more food, right? And at the
Yeah.
same time, in terms of a GDP, the global GDP has shrunk to just agricultural shares like 3% of it. So it's a huge challenge. So, it's projected that about 800 million people by 2050 are going to be suffer from hunger. And if we keep going the way we are, there's
Mm.
probably, 8 to 10% of the world's population will be, malnourished by 2030. It's a critical problem. So what is, if we look at agriculture, I want to call it 4.0, right? Like industry 4.0, what kind
Yeah.
of things do we need to do? Well, we need to use, farming has traditionally not been very innovative.
Yeah.
And so now we have all these sensors, as I said, IoT, machines, information technology. We need to use the robots. We need to use temperature and moisture sensors. We need to use drones and aerial photography. I mean, because we've done a lot of this stuff by hand. A lot of it's just a gut feel. And we also need to use the advanced GPS or glass nose technology. So the bottom line is, farming has not been really efficient.
Yeah.
And it hasn't been innovative or profitable, right? There's one thing about having a farm, another thing about, I grew up in a farming community in Pennsylvania, and the farmers did not have a lot of money, let me tell you. They have a lot of good food though. A lot of good food, but not a lot of money. So, I mean, the thing is, the governments themselves, they have to encourage this and help solve this food scarcity issue that's coming up and already exists in places like Africa, right?
Yeah.
And they need to go down through and innovate and foster and nurture that innovative environment. It's not easy. But food security is critically important. We've seen that during this pandemic. We had a little glimpse of what it's like to not have the food you want.
Absolutely.
So if we had this on a massive scale, if we had a catastrophe take place in the food supply, we've got a serious problem, or war, right? Where there isn't food. So we need to make sure that we go down through and innovate now, use these technology. By the way, it's the same technologies when we talk about manufacturing. I mean, think about it. It's IoT, right? It's big data. It's making decisions. It's making the system more efficient. The thing is, I believe that because of this pandemic and some of the glimpse of the future that we saw, a preview of coming attractions, that we understand that there's a problem with this agriculture supply chain that needs to be solved before it's a issue. So the good news is agriculture 4.0 is real, and by 2050 we got a serious problem where we got to produce 70% more food than we do today. Now think about how we don't have any more land, right? We will have more of a population, so how much more efficient do we have to be?
Absolutely. Agree to Gary's points. Agriculture 4.0. So, Maithili, as an entrepreneur, what are your investments into the technology? I mean, how technology, obviously, we understand from Gary that technology plays a very vital role in enhancing, because agriculture is now profitable, as Gary said. So as a founder and entrepreneur, so what kind of investments have you made?
Yeah, so for sure. So I think that I definitely agree that, technologies do need to be used. I think that specifically speaking from an Indian point of view, though, the kinds of technologies that you would invest in for the agricultural 4.0, as you called it, would be
Yeah.
very different from the industry 4.0, which is how we look at it, right? Because, like I said, the buying power as well as the ability to invest that industry has is not the same for farming. And so to create similar technologies or similarly priced technologies would mean that you would have a product that looks very good on paper and very good when we talk about it. It at talks like this, but it wouldn't be something that actually got bought or used on a large scale. But I do think that there's a lot of scope for affordable technologies. For example, when we talk about like moisture or temperature sensors, these are things that are fairly affordable in today's time. And they can, specifically from a water management point of view, that's something that we're really focusing on, is helping our farmers get access to these and helping them understand how they can use the data from these to make sure that they are only watering their fields as much as they need to. They're not overwatering, because that also leads to a destruction of crops other than being, environmentally damaging because you're using more water than you need to. So looking into simple solutions like this, but there's really a lot of opportunities to use easy and like quick automation. Like one example that comes to mind is something that we're working on is a lot of farmers have water pumps to pump water in their fields, and they still have manual methods for starting and stopping their pumps. And we just realized that it was such a hassle because every time they wanted to start the pump, they would have to be there in person. If they weren't there in person, then the water was just going and going for a while, and they couldn't stop it. And so it really led to a lot of wastage of water, and also was just a hassle on their side. So we've designed something which is an automated pump like starter and stopper, and it helps you use any kind of phone, not necessarily a smartphone, but just using phone and like text messaging to start, stop, and kind of see how much water has been pumped from your pump. And with India, we have a lot of problem of losing electricity in the middle of the farming day. So it also, if you lose electricity in the middle of a pumping session, it also helps you make sure that when the next like kind of electricity bout comes, that you're able to start from whatever point you stopped and kind of pump. Like let's say if you want to do 8 hours and you did 4 hours in the first, it'll do just 4 hours in the next. So it kind of is helping them automate in smaller things that they were doing manually earlier.
Very interesting. So these farmers have smartphones, or you?
So the starter actually works with smart as well as non-smart phones, but and I don't know if as much about the, or if you're in touch with the Indian, like rural business climate as much, but with Geo kind of coming in, which is Reliance is internet service in India, a lot more farmers have actually been switching to smartphones because they they've made data and access to data so cheap for everybody.
Wow,
Um,
that's
yeah.
very, very good to know. And you as
Yeah,
a
I mean it is predatory pricing and killing all the other telecom companies, but it's good for the farmers because they're getting access to data. Yeah.
yeah, but this is how it has been with Tatas as well, like the Tata Nano and all the cars that the budget cars came.
No, not necessarily. I mean, those are that's different, right? Because if the Tata Nano was an affordably built car that was in some senses sacrificing on quality and inputs, and then arriving at a lower cost, and then still selling at some, they were still EBITDA green, right? Whereas Geo has been, it's kind of more of, I would say, Amazon e-commerce, where you predatorily price, and so you're able to kind of get all of the competition and acquire a large part of the market. And in some senses for India, they were also able to get people at the bottom of the pyramid get a taste of what having a lot of data will look like. And so that has, I think, very efficiently acquired a very large customer base for them, which was not using data at all earlier.
Right, right, right. Okay, got it. Thank you, Maitli, for sharing those insights. Gary, from an investor perspective, so how do you see this industry getting benefited or getting the funding, much needed funding? Because you are global, you see challenges are different in different part of the world. So, from an investor's perspective, what do you think are the gaps to be filled before this industry, this sector can actually take off? And because we need a lot of things to happen in this sector, because by 2050, as you rightly said, we might not be there.
Yeah, no, I mean, the situation is, I think we've had a glimpse of the you know, issues, and food security has moved up the chain now in terms of visibility. So countries understand it, governments understand a lot better than they did a year ago. I mean, they were talking about it, but now we've actually got a taste of, as I said, a preview of coming attraction. So a lot of this is in the data. So being able to take that data and make sense of it. So as I've said many times, the same AI models that we've developed for manufacturing for different applications can be moved over. And then remember, the training sets are the most important. But a lot of this technology, what I'm seeing is really, it's, the Germans have a phrase, Gestalt, the sum of the parts equal the whole. And what we're seeing is we're seeing all these different technologies from all kinds of different ways start to come together. So the same sensors, that I need to use the IoT in a smart city, right? So I'm doing moisture, I'm doing optimization. Those kind of same sensors can be moved over to agriculture. What we have to do is we have to understand that, and it becomes more efficient. So if I can make a agricultural a field, a cornfield, wheat fields, if I can make my farming more efficient by 20%, by 10%, what kind of value? So we need to show what kind of value we can, and it's happening. But like I said, we're working with one of the companies that's actually doing self-driving tractors. And so the kind of efficiency is there. Farmers in my area would get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, 4:30, milk the cows, go out and get on the tractors, right? Those days are gone. And imagine the kind of using technology and the sensors, IoT, with food, with a cow, in terms of the amount of water they have, the quality of the food they have, looking at their physiological conditions. I mean, all collecting data, all real time at a moment's notice. And the challenges before, it would go in, you would check on the water, the food, the soil, but you would do it on a regular basis and, use some chemicals, put it in some tubes, shake it up. But that would happen, after a week, after a month, after a year. Now you can do it all the time, real time. It gives us a chance to course correct. So what I'm interested in is data, right? I'm interested in how we use the data. We've said many times, the AI is the electricity, data is the fuel, and 5G and 6G are the turbochargers. So that's what we see today. And then the other thing is how to get it out to the market using how do you get it out more effectively than you do today, getting it to the right place at the right time, the right product, right place, right time. So the entire chain, just like on the supply chain, needs to be made efficient all the way to the time you get that milk product in the store, get the milk product into your house. So it hadn't been done before, Sonny. It hadn't been looked at that kind of level. We weren't thinking about it.
Yeah.
What kind of, just think about, like, keep it simple, right? If I've got milk, from the time the cow's milk goes down through, gets pasteurized, out to the cartons, putting it on, which truck do I need to do to be able to take it to which market? How much capacity in that truck do I have? Which driver knows the route? What truck is in the right kind of condition to take it on that route? How long will it take for those deliveries? How do I maximize the inefficiency using optimization algorithms, and then using AI calculate, what kind of times will be back? What if I course correct? What will happen? What's the shelf life of that? Your IoT in your house, inside your refrigerator, the temperatures that need to be kept for that milk or that meat. And I mean, it's you could actually go down through and analyze. I mean, it's going to happen where in your refrigerator will call in and say, listen, we're out of something, and put the order all the way up the value chain down to the farmers so they understand what kind of supply they need. It's going to be, it's, and it's not that far away. I mean, this is technology that's, existing today in some way, shape, or form that could make that happen. So imagine you don't even have to order food anymore, right? Your refrigerator can order things for you. Oh, this thing's off. We had a power failure last night. We need to get more bacon. We need to get more milk. We need to get more X. So those times are coming, and we're close.
Yeah, I have got a question for either of you. For a founder or a startup, like, who already has maybe some agricultural lands, or, not a farmer himself, but a founder, agricultural lands and some basic, doing some agriculture already, maybe aquaculture or milk production, as Gary said. How do you see them scaling up? Because this is a very complex business. It has so many parts to it. It's just not one. You plug in, it's not fintech. You plug in a technology and there you go. It's not that simple as that. It has got so many different players in the supply chain. So I just want to know, I mean, where to start and how to take this forward. I mean, this is very complex, as Gary said. So many challenges. The trucks delivering them from the source to the retail shops. I mean, this is also one aspect of farming. This is very complex. So, as a startup founder, do you think somebody like a newcomer who like to venture is going to get discouraged because of the complexities and the labor intensive work that is involved, and the capex that is involved? Initial capital is high, I guess, in these kind of businesses. What do you think? I mean, Maithili, you would like to take that?
I mean, I think that it's important to kind of note that just because you can't do everything doesn't mean that you shouldn't do something, right? So, of course, it's a very, very complex issue. And I think that when you look at the supply chain as well, so for something like, for your refrigerator to order something and for the order directly to go to the farmer and then the farmer to kind of deliver that back directly to your doorstep, would require, of course, a very well developed, let's call it, supply chain, right? So I think that it's definitely going to happen in parts. I don't see any one company or one organization or one person at all being able to do the entire thing from start to finish. But I think that there are chances for parts of it to get automated one after the other. I mean, it doesn't all have to happen at once, right? So it could almost happen where, well, currently we go and we order on, let's say, online, right? I mean, and kind of the order comes in from a big larger supermarket player, for example, who've started taking orders online. Maybe
Yeah,
a next step would be that, can you hear me? Sorry.
yeah, I can. Yeah,
Okay,
carry on.
well, I was just going to say that maybe the next step might be that, a refrigerator is able to place that order. Maybe
Right.
another step from that would be that the refrigerator places the order directly to the APMC or the middleman, which is what it is in India. Um, but instead of a supermarket, right? And then maybe after that they place the order directly to the farmer. So I don't think it's necessary that, with the futuristic technology, that the entire supply chain needs to be kind of modified all at once, and I don't think that's possible either. But I think it's going to be parts of it getting modified till we reach the point where the entire thing is then working, compatibly.
Got it. So break it into parts, and then yeah, got it. Thank you, Maitli. Thanks for that. Gary, would you like to share on that?
In terms of what part, Sonny? What?
Yeah, for instance, Gary, like, just give you an example. If an entrepreneur has some basic understanding of the business, or maybe a farming land, who got inspired by Maitli and looking for funding from Gary.
Yeah.
How would you advise, or what's your best advice to that person?
Well, I mean, the situation is, so if they've got the land, if they're looking for technologies, if they're looking for technologies to be more efficient. I mean, what the trend is worldwide is these larger corporate farms, right? That's really where the production's coming from, or aggregation of the smaller ones together. So if they're coming out and they're looking for technology, my suggestion is what they do is they look at, it's very rarely are you going to have a farmer, by the way, Sonny. It's not going to happen in general. The farmers are generally poor. They don't have a lot of money, right? In and of the individual family farms, they don't have a lot of money. So their probability of innovating is not high. It's when you start to scale up and get larger farms where the technology starts to come in. So assuming that they're a larger farm, I mean, a couple of things. I would go down through, if I was them, I would go down through and immerse myself in technologies. I would I would study their group's top agricultural schools, like Penn State University in the US, that has one of the best online agricultural programs in the world, to be able to help them understand what technologies they can use to be able to help themselves. First is education. They need to do some, look at it to figure out what technologies are available, and then see what kind of deals can be cut. I would also look, once they find those kind of technologies, what kind of governmental support can they get to be able to support purchasing those kind of things, because they're not cheap. Then I would go down through and I would set up a pilot, and I would test it in their particular on their particular land, on a particular crop, and get used to it, right? Get used to the implementation of that technology. And it's the same thing that any company would do if they're bringing a product in: pilot it, test it, and see how it works, and then massively use it. So but education is the first part. A lot of times the farmers have done it. It's handed down through the generations of the family farm. My dad had it, my grandfather had it, I have it, and yet they don't have the education to be able to bring innovation in. So that's key. The key is educating those farmers that they need to have it, because they're so busy. Can you imagine? You've got a small family farm, you're up at 5 in, you're bed at 9 o'clock at nighttime, and you do it every day, the same thing. It's like Groundhog Day. And so what they have to do is they need to step out a little bit. And, so these agricultural extension programs where they go out and work with the farmers, it's important that they help them understand that these are available, and educate them to understand what kind of technologies, consult them, what kind of technology could help their farms be much more efficient than they are today. On the small farm, on the larger farms, they're looking at innovation, but they're also, have been locked into some antiquated models. So the larger farms consortiums, those are some of the ones that, need to look at the technology and start implementing it and testing it now.
Right. Got you. I got it, Gary and Maitli. Very good points. I mean, entrepreneurs, because after COVID-19, a lot of people are trying to do something in this sector, in agriculture, farming, sustainable farming, impact related, sort of sectors as well, which is directly related to bringing an impact, and NGOs. So I think this is a very valid session for them, those founders and entrepreneurs who are looking to. It's not about funding. It's because this is very complex, as agriculture farming is not as simple as a payment solution. So it's very complex with too many parties involved and a lot of labor intensive work and involved, and a lot of support from government is needed as well. So founders and entrepreneurs who are looking to build a business while also getting funded, please listen to what Gary and Maithili has to say. Maithili has been running this business since last 4.5 years, and Gary is very much invested into multiple unicorns and actively investing globally. So yeah, there you go. Thank you so much, Maithili. Maithili, are you there? Because I see you being frozen. But anyways, I'll come back to you, Gary. While Maithili is back, I just want to know what's your closing remarks considering this topic.
Yeah, sure. I mean, so this is we understand over the last 9 months that food can be a tremendous issue. It doesn't matter what country, where you are, what kind of job you have. We all experience a glimpse of what could be in
Yeah.
a tragic kind of way. So we understand it. We didn't have the worst. It's not the worst it could be. It's actually a situation where we just had a glimpse of it. So my recommendation, we have incredible technologies. This digital transformation is happening throughout all agriculture. We need to embrace the changes. We need to look at it differently. And we need to understand that our population is going up. The quality of the water is going down. We have a lot less land. It doesn't take a rock. I'm a country boy from Pennsylvania. We need to be much more efficient than we are today. And we need to use all kinds of, from understanding how to make resistant crops, right? Using gene modification, that kind of thing, to be able to make our world a better place. So people can reach me, Gary Fowler. I'm on Twitter. I'm on LinkedIn. I've got a couple of shows. I'm out there. I'm happy to talk to you. I love this space. I love artificial intelligence, IoT, quantum computing. So reach out to me. I'm happy to do what I can to help. And I really appreciate it. VC TV is amazing. It's like a family experience, and I enjoy being here. And it's good seeing your smiling face, Sonny.
Thank you, Gary. It's always awesome, fantastic to have you, because I have I don't have to go to an university. I just have to host VCTV to get the knowledge.
That's great.
That's the future of education, I guess, a future of education. Thank you so much, Gary,
Thank
for
you.
being committed to VCTV. And yes, and we love to have you back always. Maithili, this is your first time on VCTV. So what's your closing remarks for the session based on farming and agriculture?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on the session. I think it was a really great opportunity to learn and kind of be able to talk about agriculture in India, but also to be able to learn about it globally, and to also kind of hear expert opinions in terms of like what kinds of technologies are going to be very transformative for the sector. I think it's very important that we think about making these technologies kind of affordable, because when technologies are not affordable and when they're only being used by larger players, we kind of keep widening the gap between the rich and the poor till we reach the point where a small business effectively is not able to compete with a larger, contract farmer per se. So I think it's very important that we really think about how we can take our technologies and bring them to the smallest farmers in countries, across the world, so that we're helping them, have a fighting chance when they do have to compete against larger corporations and contract farmers moving along, right? And especially with our production needs that will be rising so fast. But yeah, thank you so much again for having me on. And, I'm on LinkedIn. I was tagged in your post, but also on pretty much all the social medias. So if anybody has any questions or would like to chat more, feel free to be in touch.
Thank you, Maithili. I've learned a lot from you as well. So what's your feedback about VCTV? Because we're going to have you more on our panel on agriculture, farming, sustainability, impact investments, because we have various topics and we need brains like you on the session. So what's your feedback about VCTV?
Thank you so much. That's really sweet. I think it's a great platform because I think it's a great learning opportunity. It's not just like, okay, like I'm coming here and I'm having to like deliver a talk, but I think I got a lot from it. both from your questions as well as Gary's address. So I think it's great, and I also completely agree with you. I think this is going to be the future of education, especially because it is so much more applied than what we learned when we were kids, right? Which just seems so pedantic at this point. Um,
Absolutely.
but yeah, so this is great. Thank you so much.
Great, fantastic. And that's what makes VCTV very special, because of the kind of content and kind of knowledge that people bring into the table. I mean, thank you so much, Gary. Thank you so much, Maithili, for your time. 40 minutes of your time in a day is very, very valuable for us. So founders and entrepreneurs who are looking to network and reach Gary, reach Maithili as well for her advice, because she's been an experienced founder in the sector. You can always reach to them, get connected to them through VCTV at www.latoken.com. Stroke profiles, events, shows. Go and explore us. Explore us on the website. You're going to find a lot of content there, a lot of useful information, and speakers and investors and other entrepreneurs who would like to share their journey and learn from other entrepreneurs and probably make some business, do some business with the investors. Please feel free to reach out to us as well. So this is the platform for you to get funded, collaborate, who knows, so please check us out. And we have events almost every day, Asia times, US times, on different topics. So having said that, we've come to the end of the show. Thank you so much again. Please take care of your health, because coronavirus is still around us, and we've had two speakers who were corona survivors, but they're back on the show. So please stay safe, stay healthy, stay connected, and I'm going to see you back on another panel, another show. Till then, take care and have a good evening, both of you. Thank you. Bye-bye.